Welcome. I am Sister Who. Today I just wanted to go over some thoughts, some reflections, I guess, on the basic question word why. It is perhaps one of the most asked and least answered questions, I suppose, because life by its very nature is this mysterious thing that is always bigger than human comprehension. We never quite know where things are going, and when things happen, of course, we're always curious about why did they happen, but that's where it gets really complicated, depending on how many or how few possibilities you're looking at. Someone attempted to explain to me once about life being simple, and I said, but life is also complex. And in pondering that basic question of simple versus complex, it finally occurred to me that what makes something simple or complex is how many pieces we're looking at. If I see an automobile, I say it's simple, it's one vehicle. If I look under the hood, it's so many parts. And as I begin to see more of the parts, I begin to understand it as being extremely complex. But if I close the hood of the car and go back to looking at just the outside of the car as one integrated, harmonious, hopefully harmonious, interconnected object, then it seems simple again, because there's only one object that my mind has to focus upon. And so, in asking the question word why, very often people want there to be a simple explanation. Just tell me the one reason. In reading a book by Scott Peck entitled In Search of Stones, he provided me with this wonderful word that I don't hear used too often, but it certainly has a lot of applications. And that is the word overdetermined. And he explained in the book how overdetermined is when there are so many possible causes for a particular event or circumstance or thing that you can't say for certain which one is the primary one. If, which thing keeps a car from running well? Is it the ignition system? Is it the cooling system? There are pistons and spark plugs and wires and fluids and switches, so many different pieces. And if a car isn't running right, initially it may seem that, why is the car not running right? Well, it might be because there are so many things wrong with it, you can't say which one is the primary thing wrong with it. Then again, from the perspective of a mechanic, it would be much easier to fix a car if there were, for the moment, only one thing wrong with it. Sometimes we're lucky and that happens. At other times, especially for those of us with older vehicles, it may be running and get us where we're going, but the ignition system isn't perfect, and the cooling system leaks, and the oil system, that has a leak too, and the tires are a little bit low on air, but not so much that I need to worry about it today, and on and on we go. There's so many possibilities, and if all of these things have a little bit wrong all at the same time, then why is the car not running correctly becomes a question with an overdetermined answer. There's too many possibilities to say which one is the primary thing to blame, the primary circumstance or condition. In a similar way, when we ask why something occurs, as we begin to ponder all the things that went into that moment, that action, that thought, the existence of that object, they're all interconnected, but they're not all the same. If you ask why a person of a particular description exists, it may be that they had parents of a certain ethnic origin, that the pigment of your skin is a reflection of may or may not be a reflection of the pigments of the skin of your parents. But that's a beginning. But you can then go back multiple generations, of course. And if you had a grandparent who was an Asian or an African somewhere in the mix, if you had a grandparent who was a European, it could go either way. Someone whose family tree is primarily Asian, but there was one relative who was European. somebody whose family tree, if you will, extended family, was primarily African, but there was one particular uncle who was Asian. Any number of things become possible. There's a wonderful song recorded by the folk singers Peter, Paul, and Mary called All Mixed Up that touches on this in a wonderfully fun way, talking about how no race of man is completely pure. Talking about how we have all these different foods from all over the world, and trying to say, where are the categories? And in a way, it's a blessing that we live within a time where we have access to so many different cultures, so many different kinds of food, so many different kinds of dress. We have more creative possibilities than perhaps any previous generation. And it would make sense to celebrate those in a positive, constructive, life-affirming sort of way.